I, a repentant sinner, renew and ratify today in your hands, O Immaculate Mother, the vows of my baptism. I renounce Satan
and resolve to follow Jesus Christ even more closely than before. Mary, I give you my heart. Please set it on fire with love for Jesus. Make it always attentive to his burning thirst for love and for souls. Keep my heart in your most pure heart,
that I may love Jesus and the members of his body with your own perfect love. Mary, I entrust myself totally to you, my body and my soul, my goods, both interior and exterior, and even the value of all my good actions.
Please make of me, of all that I am and have, whatever most pleases you. Let me be a fit instrument in your immaculate and merciful hands for bringing the greatest possible glory to God. If I fall, please lead me back to Jesus. Wash me in the blood and water that flow from his pierced side, and help me never to lose my trust in this fountain of love and mercy. With you, O Immaculate Mother, you who always do the will of God, I unite myself to the perfect consecration of Jesus as he offers himself in the Spirit to the Father for the life of the world. Amen. All right, so welcome into the arena. This is the Arena Ablaze podcast, and I'm your host, Marco Sandoval.
Count of Monte Cristo.
Very much, thank you. I am joined, as always, by my fellow son of muck, Todd Powers. How are you doing today, Todd?
Good afternoon. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah. Today, we will be going through our kerygma, which is it's a Greek word, basically means proclamation. And it's to proclaim the good news that Jesus Christ is alive and has defeated sin and death. It's about God's love, the problem of sin, the solution, and the call to action. So I'm in a class, let's see here, it's evangelization, we call it the upper room. Father Marstall at our church, he talked about the kerygma in terms of the hand, which I think is a good visual for it. So he talks in terms of the palm being, in the beginning, God created everything. He created man in his own likeness and image. The pinky finger represents the man who is weak, but man was created weak. The ring finger demonstrates love. God is love, and he loves us. The middle finger represents Jesus, that God sent his only Son to die for our sins and for salvation. The pointer finger is God sent the Holy Spirit. So Jesus died, rose from the dead, and he sent the Holy Spirit to us. And then the thumb shows that we must choose. We have to say yes to God. We have to give our fiat. We have to repent and believe in the good news. So it requires a choice. So I think that's a good representation. If you read the Acts of the Apostles, a lot of like Peter's preaching, and Paul often will always start with some beginning. It not always goes back to the beginning of creation. A lot of times it goes back to his own beginning, our own beginning and weakness. But I think it's a good thing to have running in your head when you're proclaiming your story, your witness to other people, and so forth. So we're going to be going over my witness, my kerygma, so to speak.
Can't wait.
So, we'll start with my life before the change, in my creation in the beginning. I was a young man or young boy who was born into a family of divorce. I have no memory or recollection of my dad being in the home. My memory is just me and my mom, and vague memories of visitations with my dad and my grandparents. Tough way to grow up. My mom was, not only was that, my parents were divorced, but then my mom had a series of relationships and multiple divorces. That was kind of my experience of marriage and family. Was my dad's not here. Some of the men were good. men, fun to be around, and I gained things from, but they're not your dad. So often they're trying to disciple you, show you the way, tell you what you can and can't do, and it's just very difficult coming from somebody who's not your father, taking that instruction. So, I kind of grew up that way. My father is an alcoholic. That was a source of the divorce, but then that continued to be an issue for him kind of throughout his life and throughout my upbringing into high school. So, one of my creation stories that I remember from being little was being at my grandma's house visiting my dad. And he went out to get groceries. He was going to the grocery store. He's going to be right back. So, I'm little. I don't even know how old I am, but I'm sitting up on the couch at the window watching the cars go by. Car comes. I'm thinking that's my dad. And it goes by. It's not my dad. The next car comes. And I'm waiting at the window. It's my dad. It's not my dad. So I do that for hours until I kind of fall asleep. And then I wake up to my grandma and my dad having a little shouting match because, he said he was going to the grocery store and he went to the bar, didn't come back. So, those type of things, what that really did to me is kind of damage my relationship to love, to fatherhood, to family. I kind of always just didn't trust in it, I guess. I didn't have a solid foundation in it. Always had to have a backup plan or, didn't believe I was good enough. That's probably what it really created in my mind was, I'm not good enough to come back for, or, I'm not good enough for people to stay together for me. And so that very dangerous thing that made it to where I was terrible at relationships with this fear of abandonment. Had a bad relationship with love, didn't really understand what love was. It wasn't enduring in my mind. Now, the crazy thing about all that is it never impacted my relationship with God. There are so many men that I've talked to that don't have a good father figure in their life, and that really impairs their understanding of who God is and God's place in his life. That was never me. From, my mom, to her great credit, she chose Catholicism for me. So we don't come from a Catholic family, but she thought Catholicism's the truth, and so this is what I want my son to be. So she had me baptized a little bit later.
So what is your cultural background? Is it Latin, Cuban, Mexican, Spanish?
Spanish to Mexico. The story I have is, I have a Spanish grandpa from way back when that came to Mexico, red-haired. I was always stuck in my mind, a red-haired Spanish grandfather. Came to Mexico and married an Aztec woman, and we kind of came from those people. So if you see my dad's family, I'm very tall compared to them, and they do look very Indian in nature. It's kind of it's another tough thing of having a broken family. I don't really know that. Those are like little pieces of stories I've been told, and that I kind of cling on to. Are they true? Are they rooted in fact? I don't really know. But that's, I kind of later went and looked in Spain, and my last name Sandoval comes from Sandoval de la Reina, Spain. So it's kind of northern Spain where the last name comes from.
And so what do you think, if your mom didn't have any religious background, what do you think, which is, when you think about the culture and the Latin background, you would think they would automatically be Catholic. Was there any Catholics in her family?
No, we're Baptist. My grandfather and my grandmother too. I think Baptist, Mennonite, German Mennonite, and Baptist. That's kind of where my mom came from. My dad's side, I believe they were Catholic, but they were the type of Catholics that it wasn't. They weren't practicing. It wasn't central in their life. Type of Catholicism, and of course, being a broken family, I never saw that from them, and kind of didn't really get that.
Have you asked your mom what made her decide? Did she just decide to go to a Catholic parish?
She just thought it was the truth. She just studied some religions and been around it. My grandpa in particular was kind of a seeker and looking around at different religions and stuff, and she just thought that the Catholic faith was the true faith that went back to the apostles, and she just thought it was the truth. And so she wanted me to be baptized Catholic, and she became Catholic too. But that's something I really love my mom for, because that's not, that wasn't, she made that happen.
And did you grow up in Valley Center or Wichita?
I started out off of Salina there, and kind of like 29th and Arkansas
the north
area.
end.
I went to Cloud Elementary for a little while, till about first grade, and then we moved to Halstead. So I grew up in Halstead, Kansas, Sacred Heart Parish for second to sixth grade, and so that's where I was catechized. It was just me and a nun. I didn't have a class that I went through for First Communion. I just went to classes with a nun in the rectory, and then made my first communion, and then I could serve in second grade. That's what I really remember. I loved to serve. And so I look back and think I had a real curiosity and reverence for God from the time I was little. I used to ride my bike up there and hope people didn't show up so I could serve Mass, fill in. The kids wouldn't show up. Yeah. So I was really into the serving thing. And served all the way till I was 16 years old, served the altar. Of course, as the older you got, you were kind of like, I'm like 2 feet taller than the rest of these, and I'm kind of ready to retire. But, that was definitely it. So kind of, I tell these girls I coach, Satan's going to try and come get you in your love early. I think it's lies, just like in the Garden of Eden, it's lies, and then often lying to yourself, and then it's love and sexuality is where he wants to pierce your heart with his poison. And he got me that way for sure. That impaired love, and that kind of like not really being true to love, because I, in my mind at that time, hadn't really experienced it, made me to where I was looking for relationships to validate myself, but yet never trusting in them. So never investing in it, And so I know there's a lot of young people that are like that. But I grew up that way, kind of went from relationship to relationship. And when people, like when I would have a breakup, it would be very difficult for me, because it was just that me reliving that rejection, those rejection echoes that go way back to my childhood. So sometimes I would hang on or chase people that maybe I didn't really care for as much as it seemed, because I was chasing. It was more about losing something. And so that kind of resulted in, relationships in high school. And then I ended up, I had a girlfriend that I was really fond of in junior high. And then we reconnected in high school. And it was a girl I wanted to marry, and she got pregnant right after we graduated high school. And so my daughter came, and as a good Catholic boy, I'm going to get married and do things the right way. So we got married. We got married in the church even. And still trying to do the right thing, trying to be a good man, but having no idea how to do it. And so wasn't true to my marriage. Kind of a continued pattern of I just didn't trust it. So I always felt like I had to have something.
You say you weren't true, you ran around on her?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what made you, why do you think you did that?
I think it was because I can't put all my eggs in one basket, because I don't want to be sitting by the window and somebody's not showing up.
I've said this, man is as faithful as his options. And, I've never had somebody give me the option of being unfaithful. I'd like to say that. Were you in positions where it came up, or?
I'd say
I
never
looking for it. I hate to be personal about this, but
no, I think it's important. I think it's important for men. I never had problems with the ladies. I would say that. So yeah, there was always opportunities there, especially when you're 18 and just graduated high school and you're still in your hometown. You're still surrounded by an environment that's familiar and easy for you. Beyond that, it was just, for me, look, it was more of like a defense mechanism. It was I can't give myself, I'm not going to be vulnerable enough to give myself to somebody, because I got to hold something back, or I've got to have a backup plan, because I don't believe that person's going to be there for me. It all in my mind, and this is years and years of prayer and thought, and a little bit of counseling. it all just came back to kind of that in the beginning. I felt like I wasn't good enough. And so here I am. I got
it's
everything.
Exciting, and there's adrenaline, there's sexual adrenaline, there's just something about all of that has this short-term fuel.
Yeah, well, it's habitual sin for sure. So it's like, what do they call that? I can't think of the name of it, but basically like your heart is like made of wax in this image, and these areas that you sin, that the devil gets a hold of you, they kind of make depressions on your heart so that these things run to the low spot. And so once you get into habitual sin, it's really by grace. Because I spent many years trying to white knuckle it. I'm going to white knuckle it. I can change my phone number and do all these different things to protect myself. But in the end, none of that really matters.
Human behavior is remarkably consistent.
Yeah. Yes. So
it's been my experience that only great emotional pain changes that ship of emotional behavior. Something happens, a catastrophic failure, where that behavior, a person is forced to change because they don't want to experience that pain anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, needless to say, my marriage fell apart. I went through a divorce, so I was married at basically 18. By the time I was 20, I went through a divorce. I had my daughter, and so that was, traumatizing. All of a sudden, you don't have your daughter. You're, I'm trying to work it out.
Were you attached to her? Did you bond with her? Did she bond with you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then I continued that because I, bless my dad and my mom even, a lot of times I think and look back, and it's over many years of pondering these things. They were doing the best they could with, we're all broken in some degree at our core. And so, they were doing the best they could at that time. And, but I was very formed in my mind that I did not want to be the type of dad that I experienced growing up. So I was going to do whatever I could to be a part of my daughter's life. So yeah, that was I was trying to work it out even after we were divorced, still trying to work it out. We were kind of trying to work it out, but mostly it was probably me just in delusion, that I could work that out, and I had broken it, fractured it. And so, many years down the road, they moved away for a time to Kansas City. So every other weekend I'm on the road picking up my daughter, coming back, picking up my daughter, coming back. I never missed a weekend. I kind of oriented my whole life around that. So it would have been, it was just never an option not to be there for her. So, I was still doing plenty of things, plenty of, party guy things with the friends on the weekends. But the weekends that I had my daughter, all that was pushed to the side, and I went and got her. And so we had a lot of time riding in the car, bonding, and just spend time together. It's been a wonderful thing, but it's also, very emotionally traumatic thing at such a young age to go through. I'm in college at that time. When I went through my divorce, I took a semester off of school. I dropped my classes, and then I went up to Manhattan for a semester to just try and get away, get my mind right, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I got most of those credits, but not all of them, transferred back to Wichita and finished my degree. So I didn't miss much of a beat, but yeah, it was a hard road to hoe for sure. So, I guess on the back end of that, again, you go through all that trauma in a marriage that falls apart, and you're the reason why it fell apart. And I'm back in this posture of a place where I don't ever want to be married again. Like I'm not capable of it. Like I'm not a good person. I just don't want to ever go through that pain again. So I kind of went years that way until I met my current wife, and we got, and that was a deal in the beginning of our relationship. Like, she was trying to come close to me, and I was trying to keep her at arm's length. And, there's a lot of mixed signals in that. But I would always be like, no, it's not really about you. It's about me, because I knew I was still kind of that same guy. And I did not want to let somebody down. And I really could see the goodness in my wife and loved her and respected her. And I did not love and respect myself because of kind of where I was trapped at. But it's important to say that, through all that, I prayed so much. I never lost my faith. I went to confession. I confessed all of those sins and continued to confess. I would have had no chance without the grace of confession. There would be times I'd go to confession and I would know that probably I'm not going to be able to amend. Like, I'm just stuck in a situation. But, sometimes you'll have people tell you that, you don't go to confession unless you're truly sorry for your sins. I was always truly sorry. If you were going to make changes to do something different, and I always had that intention, but knew that probably wasn't going to happen. But with habitual sins, if you don't go drink from that font of grace, I think it's folly to think that you're going to get to a place where, okay, now I'm ready. Now I've resolved on my own that I'm going to make the changes necessary. Now I can walk into the confessional and receive grace. Like, you need grace to have a fighting chance.
Going back into the confessional is like being a scrub on a sports team where you're not going to play. You're never going to start. You're never going to get in the game. But every effing game, you suit up and you sit on the bench and you're like, you want to play, but you're just not good enough to play. And it'd be easy to quit. It'd be easy not to go back to the confessional, but you continue to show up because you're on the team. Mm-hmm. It's a hard thing to do as a practicing Christian is to continue to profess those faults to another human being. It's an intricate part of 12-step programs to write down your faults and share them with another person. It's truly Catholic, and going into that confessional and being sorry, because I felt this, and then wondering if I'm in the near occasion of this, I don't know if I'm going to be able to abstain. Mm-hmm. It's a hard place to be, and then the devil gets a hold of your brain, and he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing, dummy?
Yeah. Why
do you want to go back? You're not, you know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
You're going to go to the bar, you're going to talk to the girl or whatever it is."
That's 100% correct. Like, he's the father of lies, and
I'm
that's
just
what he
a
does.
scrub. I'm I can relate to that analogy of I need to be on the team. Mm-hmm. If I quit showing up, I'm not on the team anymore, and then I got a big problem.
I have no idea I would have survived without sacrament of reconciliation, because every time I walk in there, I used to go down to the cathedral and I have the priest down there with the Irish accent, and I just go in there and it just felt so good, and I just feel a movement in my heart. I've been that way ever since I was little. This goes back to serving Mass, receiving communion. Anytime I come into the sacraments, I always ask everyone around me. We just had these adults come through confirmation. Did you feel something? Did you feel it in your heart? I mean, I always feel it. I always feel a burning sensation in my heart every time I come into the sacraments. I experienced it today. I went to confession this morning, and my confessions are kind of a struggle sometimes now, because I'm like, I have a trouble examining my conscience, even though I do plenty wrong. It's just not as easy when you're doing like the big flesh things wrong. It's more difficult when it's like the internal pride, the really corrosive stuff that you're trying to think of. But man, I go in there and I'm like, I don't even really have a whole lot, but I'm dying of thirst. I know I've got to drink. And, it's about loving God. He wants to love us in that. And so I go in there to give him love and to be loved. And I walk out feeling that sensation in my heart and feeling really like relieved. And it's a wonderful thing. It's life-giving, for sure. That's my experience of it. And so, after that kind of push and pull, I get married again, right? And I go in and it's, I love my wife to death. And we have 3 beautiful kids together. But I just continue to struggle. I continue to struggle in it. I struggled all the way up until I was 40 years old, probably. And I think about, what that change moment was. A lot happened in that space. A lot of suffering and trial came to me. I always start it with, Boeing closing here in Wichita. Basically lost my job. I went and got my master's degree, and I come back, yay, I got my master's degree in December. And then January after Christmas, we have a meeting, and then Boeing says, yeah, we're closing down the Wichita site. I'm like, oh, what are we going to do now? So I went through losing my job, essentially, even though, I was necessary to the operations, so they kept me on until the very end. But ultimately, my family and I didn't want to move with the company. So I'm going through this, which is great. And in retrospect, it was very necessary because just there was a lot of sin around my work and the work of my hands. And so sacrificing that, I think, was important to go through. It was part of my recreation process. So that kind of started it for me. So I then soon, within that same time period, decided I want to read the Bible. By the time I'm 40, this is my goal. I want to read the Bible front to back. And so I started in on that, read the Bible and accomplished that goal by the time I was 40. So I'm doing a lot of this in the Adoration Chapel. Father Urach came to Magdalene, and he kind of challenged us all to take, adoration hours. And I thought, I want to do something hard for Father Urach, so I'm going to take a 3 a.m. adoration hour. Rah! And so I start going in there 3 a.m. and reading the Bible, and I read the Bible, and I always feel like that just shaped my mind. It's a mind shaping exercise to the point where going from all the way straight through, it just over time, it's like a great, unbelievable living story, God's story, but there's some parts of it that are difficult to get through, just like a lot of really good stories. Like you have to earn it. You're reading through like Leviticus and Numbers, you've got to kind of just like work through it. And you're being shaped. It's like working out. It's like you said, going to practice when you're never going to get in the game. You're not getting the good fruits. So I just changed my mind to the point where I think in terms of that book. I think every time I think in terms of that book, when something comes to my mind, I remember a story from that book, and I go to that story, or I open it and flip off to another story, and I'm like, oh, and then read some footnotes and link to another story. So it really helps the way I think about life. So that was huge. That was a moment-changing thing for me. And so then the 3 a.m. adorations, I'm in the 3 a.m. adoration chapel, usually by myself.
So real quick, perpetual adoration, for those that may be watching that are not Catholic, is the exposure and the monstrance of body, soul, and divinity of Christ.
Correct.
In a private room, and where it is a consecrated host that is exposed, and it's a wonderful experience.
Yeah, it's
in the presence of Jesus.
It's again another thing I start dying of thirst if I don't go to the adoration chapel.
And Protestant Christians will say, well, Christ is everywhere, and I can talk to Jesus wherever. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, all I can speak to is the experience of it. And there's really no right way of doing it. You just go in there and you're in the presence of
the King of Kings,
the Sacred Heart of Jesus himself, body, blood, soul, and divinity. It's like, oftentimes think of our mother, all the 30 years she spent in his presence. It's a lot like that. You're just sitting there and adoring him. You're just looking at him. You're watching him. You're listening for him. You're contemplating him in your heart. Sometimes I'm reading the Bible. Sometimes I'm praying a rosary. Sometimes I'm just sitting in there praying for him to send the Holy Spirit to empty me, empty me of myself, my thoughts, my worries, my vices, my passions, and just fill me with him. And I just wait for him to project on my mind what is needed. There's been times where I've fallen asleep in there, and then again, that's wonderful because you're at such peace, it's just that day you fell asleep. There's times I go in there and that the worst things, terrible things I've done come flashing through my mind. And I think I talked to a priest one time about that. I'm like, I go in there and I'm like thinking about things I shouldn't be thinking about. And he's like, no, just surrender. Like he's pulling those things out of you, or he's don't fight it. Just let those things come through and be projected on your mind. He's healing you. He's healing your memories. Which, that's something that I love and I pray a lot, to heal my memories, to protect my imagination, two very important things and great prayers. So, 3 a.m. adoration by myself all the time in the middle of the night on like a Wednesday night, for instance. And one night, this little Vietnamese lady walks in, and I'm like, oh, you hear the door open before anybody comes in because there's kind of like a vestibule. And so I'm kind of like, oh, that's kind of unusual. Somebody's coming in the door at 3 a.m. and then I'm sitting in there and then somebody comes in and I'm kind of like, oh, I'm relieved. I'm like, okay, it's a little Vietnamese lady. I'm safe. It's all good. And then so she sits over there and I'm just doing my thing. And then she leans over to me and she's got this little pamphlet and she says, have you ever seen 33 Days to Morning Glory? This is the exact pamphlet that she handed me. And I'm like,
no kidding.
Yeah. I'm like, no, I've never heard of it. And so she says, you should look at this. And so I take it and start looking at it, and I never see her again. That was a once thing. So I've got this little pamphlet. They don't make these anymore. And so that's the consecration to the Immaculate, to Jesus, total consecration to Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary. So I did the 33 days consecration and just fell in love with it.
And you introduced that to me as well.
Mm-hmm. I introduced that to anybody that'll come near me. I just think it's so important. I talk about the Bible as being mind shaping for me. This is what shaped my heart. This is what pierced my heart. I started recreating my heart, the Mother Mary, because it's just it's a contemplation of Mary's role in salvation history through the eyes of the saints. So it goes through St. Louis de Montfort, it goes through St. Maximilian Kolbe, St. Pope John Paul II, St. Mother Teresa, and kind of talks about their unique relationships and devotions to Mary. And so, as Father Carney will say, devotion just makes your heart more tender towards what you're devoted to. And so I did that, and it just changed my heart. I've done it 5 or 6 times since, just throughout the, this is happening around like 2014 time frame. So, over the last 10 years, I've done it probably 5 or 6 different times. So that's led me into a lot of spiritual reading. People will ask about Mary and Mary's role, and we'll do an episode on that. To me, Mary has to be experienced. It's an experience. It's like we're talking about experiencing Christ in the Eucharist in adoration. You experience Mary and Mary's love as well. It says multiple times in the Bible about she took these things in her heart and pondered them in her heart. I was watching an episode of Father Ripperberger, and he was asking, one of his exorcisms, when was Mary's moment of greatest glory? And he said that it was when she was standing under the cross. She was in perfect virtue. When she was standing under the cross, she was offering, in justice, she's offering the greatest good to God, like her child to God, the fortitude and perfect virtue. So it's just a unique relationship. I could talk to her all the time, to reveal my heart to myself, to reveal the heart of others to me, to take my prayers and raise them to her son. And so it's just the type of thing that really started tenderizing my heart. It's really what it is just a hardening of heart and hiding of my heart. It's kind of the way I had operated in life. Masks, pretending like I have everything together. And, a lot of people, I was a dangerous character because I'm the kind that they look at you and they think, man, this guy's really got it together. I mean, he's a Catholic and he really believes in it and really loves, and I did and do. But then I had this dark hidden corner where I'm not that person. So on one, I look to be somebody, but then I've got this part of me that's, kind of an ugly part of me. So that just kind of led me into a lot of spiritual reading. You kind of see this pile of books here, a lot of consecrations. I did consecration to Merciful Love, which is St. Therese, led me into the St. Therese little way. The elevator to God, that's a beautiful way. I like that for a lot of people I come across who think they're too little, too small. They don't contemplate the big concepts of God. I think that's a great one because he comes to you where you're at and he lifts you up. Come like a little child, he reaches down. So that was a good one for me. St. Joseph consecration, that's another one I did. Fatherhood, and I think often of St. Joseph with stepdads that I dealt with. I would have been a very difficult stepson, very strong-minded, and I know I was not. I can't even imagine as me as a dad, an older man, entering into a relationship where I was trying to disciple a son like me that wasn't my own. That would be a very difficult thing. So I a lot of grace in those situations. So that's the turn. I kind of get tired of talking about COVID, but COVID was a big decision point. This is where, Blue Army started. So I start teaching virtues to younger people. So talking about these virtues, I start teaching them to younger, my softball players, and that causes you to really contemplate them and think about them so they become part of you. You have to study them so that you can teach them, put them in simple terms.
Be aware of them so you can use them. It's amazing to me how many Protestant Christians aren't aware of the virtues and that each virtue is the opposite of deadly sins. And it's just an amazing practice to know what they are and what the definitions are and what gifts and graces they give to counteract the evil one.
Yeah, I think just in general, like even me as a lifelong Catholic, I would say knew what the virtues were until I really walked into them and took a close look at them, was interested in them. And, the fruit that you gain from studying them and taking the concepts and then communicating them to somebody else, I feel like was very fruitful for me. And I pretty much see the whole world through that. Now I'm always thinking in terms of virtue. Everything, every decision I make, every problem that comes to me with my kids or at work, I'm always thinking that way. Not to say I always choose rightly, for sure, but I always, at least it's a framework and a vision that I use to see everything through. So, I would just say that all that change kind of delivered me to a place with COVID where I really had to put those decisions into action. Like, okay, now what am I going to do? So series of what am I going to do in this tough situation and choosing my path based on, these new things that I had learned and actually making life decisions and bearing consequences to them. So it's easy for you to do that on your own. And sometimes you deal with other people around you that maybe don't see things the way you see them. And so that can get you in trouble. So, since that change, I would say, what COVID and making changes along COVID came more attacks. So I would say just because you change and you choose and you become a different person and you maybe put old sins away, you do put, in my case, thanks be to God, those old sins have been retired. I don't really have those temptations anymore. Of course, I'm aware of that piece of me for sure, and I take active measures to stay away from that. Like, you always know that once you have habitual sin, if God's grace has overcome it for you, you're still susceptible there. So you have to be very careful about your occasions of sin and the choices that you make to kind of keep yourself away from that. But the fruit of some of that was right away. I went through my marriage. Kind of went through a real trial. My marriage to my second wife through COVID. And so, when I was going through that to the point of being separated, to the point that there was divorce in place. I went to talk to Father Bernie, and I'm like, what is going on? I don't understand. I've come through all of this. I've given my life over to God. I make totally different. I'm not that person anymore. I've made all these choices differently. I love my wife, my family. Why am I going through this? Why is this my lot? Why is God choosing this? Why is God sending this to me? And he just kind of told me, you're under attack. The devil's never going to let you make those type of positive moves to embrace God, to focus, build your life around God. He's going to try to trip you up, and just know that Satan doesn't have any power outside of what God allows him. So, there are trials that happen to you for your own benefit, like your salvation is afoot. So, you're going to have to decide what you're going to do in this situation. So, kind of the continuation of all the things that I learned in through the consecration. When I had that divorce, my response, I purposely responded to the divorce on October 13th, the miracle of the sun, the last visitation of Our Lady of Fatima, because I just clung to her. I just grabbed on to her, and I clung to Our Lady's mantle. I prayed to her, put my marriage in her hands, that she would lift it up. And then, it was kind of as a part of going through that too, I ran across Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac's story. That was a very dear story to me because, what I pulled out of that was, God may ask you to sacrifice what you love the most. He wants to know whether you're willing to do that. He may not, in the end, as Abraham says to Isaac, God will provide. God will provide. I don't know. God's asked this of me, but I don't know what God will do, but I'm going to be obedient here, and God will provide. And so I hung on to that. Like if I'm obedient, if I'm willing to sacrifice what I most love, I'll lay it on your altar. Trust you. You know the way through. You know what's going to happen here. You know what your purposes are. I'll trust that whatever you do is going to be good.
That's a very mature and difficult conclusion to come to because when I went through my trial, my first marriage, that thought never crossed my mind. I wanted whatever it took to keep my family together. It never crossed my mind to lay this at the foot of Christ and thy will be done, not mine. I wanted it. I wanted to keep my family together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and looking back from my vantage point now, I agree with that. And I would not ever pat myself on the back because I was just like, I had just really bought into all of this stuff to the point that I knew that my only way through was to just cling on to all of the actual relationships. Like, God's alive, Jesus is alive, the Blessed Mother's alive, and they care. They care. They care about you. They care about me. They care about every choice you make. And so if I would just try to make all my choices in them, surrender everything up into their hands, sacrifice, just cling to them and just, stay true. I felt like that was what was going to get me through. And so I did. And focused on gratitude. That was another big thing. I really focused on gratitude because there's always so much good, so many wonderful things that happen in a day. Even when you think the whole world's crashing down around you, if you can put space between that and yourself and just, what happened good? And just take these little pieces of goodness and focus on those and thank God for those, just really is powerful. And that I just feel like so many more good things come to your eyes when you do that.
It's very difficult to do the focus it takes to have that that ability to do that is very difficult when you're in absolute catastrophic failure and pain. It's almost impossible. It's really true grace that one is given to allow oneself to separate oneself from that catastrophic emotional pain, to give oneself grace. I tell my kids this: be your own best friend in your head. Whenever I'm suffering like that, there's no best friend in my head. I'm scared, really. Scared. Why am I scared? Maybe I'm not getting what I want. Maybe what I want is to keep my family together. And it's just catastrophic emotional failure. The fact that you're further enough along in your faith that you were able to peel that back and not be selfish. I was completely selfish with my thoughts. And that's what saved you. I know we've talked about this, and every marriage has its own challenges and struggles, and sometimes I'll tell you, bro, you got what you wanted. You kept your family together. You won. You're a winner. That's a win.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing when I say that is, the flip side of that is, I feel like I'm a loser. But yet, why do I feel that way? Because I have an amazing relationship with my wife.
Yeah. That
was as a result of something that I lost. So,
yeah, I think that's to me the biggest key, is that I went through all of that hell with my first marriage, and just like got broke down to the point where I'm like, help me. Like, I just surrender, I give. And then got built back up in this way. And then when this second trial came through, it's the only thing I knew to do. I just knew. From very early on, I said, this is it. If this doesn't work out, I don't know what's going to happen, but if this doesn't work out, I'm done. Like, I will never marry again. Like, I'm sacrificing all of that side of me. Like, I'm just going to be, this is it. I put all my eggs in this basket. I had people look at me like I was crazy. Like, really? You're going to say that? And I'm like, 100%, because I just feel like that's what I have to do. And so that's what I did. And
you gave your wife patience and distance and grace. And
I remember one of our key conversations was, she said, I don't know. I can't see how we ever going to get back. How we're going to get back to where we were after all that's happened. And I said, we're not going back. I said, we're just got to meet each other where we are, right now, today. We just got to meet each other where we're at right now. I'm willing to meet you where you're at right now. And it's not like I'm some great genius. That's the Holy Spirit coming through me. And I remember, I feel like her response was, okay, I can see that makes sense. Maybe there's a chance. That was the first time I feel like there was a little flicker of light, when we decided we didn't have to go back. We didn't have to make up for what had happened. All we needed to do was meet where we were and believe in the wedding of Cana, that Jesus can turn water into wine. And it's the best, sweetest, most choice wine that there ever has been. I kept that in my mind a lot through going through that too. So
very special.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I would just say there's like, I'll kind of end, I guess, with a couple, St. Augustine, he says, for thou hast made us for thyself, and our hearts are restless till they rest in thee. 100%, that's my heart. When I say I feel like I'm dying of thirst because I need confession this morning, even though I don't have anything major and crazy going on in my life, that's what it is 100% for me. So when I talk about like my life since, my decision, it's a series of that. Like, in this world, we're never going to be fulfilled. Our heart's always going to be restless. The key is, when you think that you can sustain your heart with other things, is quickly getting rid of that thought and going back to the source, going back to God. Because you'll continue to be tempted. You're going to continue to have trials. You're going to continue to fall down. You're never going to be fixed. There's no perfect people. It's just your heart's restless. Go back to the source. Your heart will rest in God. Rest your heart in God.